Meet the top scorers in this year's Diploma of Secondary Education examination. Henry Kissinger on a visit to Beijing. And the Thai parliament prevents the leader of the Move Forward party from being re-nominated for prime minister. Hello and welcome to TVB News. Results of this year's Diploma of Secondary Education examination, or DSE, were out today. 4 students stood out among 42,000 candidates, achieving the top grade in at least 7 subjects. Completing their secondary school education through 3 years of the pandemic and receiving their public exam results after all COVID restrictions are lifted. Some received their DSE results with elation, but not as much for some others. Compared with 11 top scores last year, only 4 students bagged the top marks in at least 7 subjects. Among them are 2 super top scores, who also received an additional top grade in the mathematics extended part, both from St. Paul's Co-Educational College. One of them, Ku Pui-sum, intends to study medicine in Hong Kong.
We have COVID, pandemic, and also my dad was also having some kind of chronic diseases. So that's why I also want to from their experience and from what they have suffered or been through, I hope I can use my own power and strength and what I've learned in schools to help the society and help everyone.
Terry Lam, meanwhile, is planning to study science at the University of Cambridge.
Hong Kong is an international city, and there's always people going out and in, and it is also, let's say, a good idea for some people to go overseas, I guess, to learn from the expertise of people all over around the world.
The 2 other top scorers, Eden Cheng from Good Hope School and Charlie Law from Queen's College, both of them want to become a doctor in future. Across Hong Kong, around 42% DSE candidates this year have achieved the grades needed for a university place. Chief Executive John Lee gave encouragement to the students. He told all DSE takers that no matter what results they might have received, academic performances are not the only markers for ability. And now a different success story at this year's public exam. A 21-year-old inmate has received the best ever DSE results taken in a prison in Hong Kong. He shares with TVB News how he reached for the stars behind bars. A top score unlike any other at the Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education examination. Unlike most students, the candidate Ming is serving time for rioting and took the public exam behind bars. Against all odds, Ming nabbed the highest score ever of 29 points and 8 stars by an inmate taking the DSE exam. He studied for the exam every day from 6:30 in the morning to pass lights out time at 10 p.m. The 21-year-old says he is most grateful to his family.
My family have to spend 2 hours to come to the Sha-Chui because it is in in Lantau Island and very far from the urban district. I really regret for my breaking the law and not only me suffer this, but also my family suffer from this.
Similar remarks by another inmate, Siu Zhen.
I got a lot of pressure in remand. It's like a suffocated. I do think my family and institution give me a lot of help to make it through.
But these young convicts continue to be hounded by such fear.
I'm afraid after my release, some people may discriminate or have some different opinion on me. I hope I can overcome those obstacles, reintegrate to the society and have some normal life.
Helping these DSE takers in prison is mathematics teacher Jason Koo. He encourages his students to not feel defeated by their criminal records with a math analogy.
Life is just like an equation. We do have many constants in our life that we can change it, but we still have many variables. If you do have a positive mindset, well planning, can still have a better life in their future, no matter where you are.
This year also marks the highest number of DSE papers set by inmates with the highest passing rate over the past 6 years. The Correctional Services Department has offered learning materials and practice papers on this e-learning platform for DSE candidates. Hoping to turn their lives around after their release, Ming wishes to embark on a China Studies program at university and have a stable job after graduation. And Xiu Chun, being a big fan of comedy superstar Stephen Chow, hopes to pursue film-related programs in future. While teachers and staff from the correctional facility offer a slew of academic resources and assistance to these inmates sitting the Diploma of Secondary Education examination, the Correctional Services Department said support from their family and society is even more important to these young detainees amid their challenging times behind bars. Across Hong Kong, 18 youth inmates took the DSE exam. 8 of them notched results that meet the minimum requirement to enter a university. The annual book fair began today and will be open to the public for 7 days. Some exhibitors believe the city's return to normalcy and the recent distribution of consumption vouchers will help business, with the event also attracting large numbers of international participants. This as some booksellers say they're not worried about selling books removed from public libraries pending review. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Hong Kong's bibliophiles charged into the Convention and Exhibition Center at 10 this morning, on the prowl for their favorite books and authors in this year's book fair. Many waited in line since midnight. The events also attracted first-time visitors to the SAR.
I'm interested in books that have Chinese and English together so that I can learn Chinese by comparing the two.
With this year's theme being children and teen literature, several exhibitors expressed hope in more book sales this year, citing that the return to normalcy and the recent batch of consumption vouchers could increase appetite for book purchases. Some exhibitors were seen selling books that have been recently removed from public libraries pending review. But many of them said they were not worried, citing that the books remain available in bookstores and that event organizers have not blacklisted any literature. Besides popular Chinese novels and education-related books, exhibitors from countries such as Brazil, Indonesia, and Poland took the opportunity to promote their country's writings.
Our intent here at this booth was to promote Brazil through Brazilian literature in Chinese. That all of our books are in Chinese. Brazil is not very well known in this part of the world, so we want to change that here with our participation here in Hong Kong Book Fair to try to make Brazil more known besides all the football, samba, and coffee.
Most of the people that came to our booth actually asked about the tourism spots in Indonesia, especially Bali, because Indonesia just reopened after COVID and everyone wants to come to Bali.
Consuls from a host of nations also made their way to the exhibition center.
Sure. I will start with the Chinese saying. There is an idiom saying, "when hua da dai, jin ji zhang xi." And I think culture is a very important manifestation of our countries, because I think one of the things that we have in common is very, very long and rich history. So our plan is to bring a little bit more of the taste of Israel in the cultural aspect to Hong Kong.
International participants in this year's book fair also exhibited their unique cultural items and artwork in this special section of the event. The exhibitors hope that their literature could attract Hong Kongers ever closer to their homelands. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
In Beijing, top diplomat Wang Yi says the United States needs Kissinger-style diplomatic wisdom in its policies towards China. Wang made the remark during a meeting with former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. It is impossible to contain or encircle China, top diplomat Wang Yi told Henry Kissinger, who is on a visit to the Chinese capital. Wang said China's development has a strong momentum and inevitable historical logic, and it is impossible to try to transform China. 100-year-old Kissinger is on an unannounced visit to Beijing that coincides with that by another former U.S. Secretary of State, John Kerry, now the Biden administration's climate envoy. U.S. policy towards China requires the diplomatic wisdom of Kissinger and the political courage of Nixon, the Chinese Foreign Ministry quoted Wang as saying. In 1971, Kissinger secretly visited Beijing to lay the groundwork for then-President Richard Nixon's historic trip the following year. That led to the U.S. and the People's Republic of China officially recognizing each other in 1979. Wang also told Kissinger that the U.S. should draw a clear line with Taiwan independent separatist activities if it sincerely hopes for stability across the Taiwan Strait. Washington has said Kissinger is visiting Beijing as a private citizen and not on behalf of the U.S. government. On Tuesday, Kissinger met with Defense Minister Li Shangfu. Li expressed hopes the United States can work with China to promote the healthy development of relations between their two militaries. Meanwhile, John Kerry today concluded his 4-day visit to China, a trip aimed at kickstarting cooperation between the world's two biggest polluters. In a meeting with Vice President Han Zheng, Kerry said climate change is a universal threat that should be handled separately from broader diplomatic issues, while Han said the two countries have maintained close communication and dialogue on climate since Kerry's appointment as a special envoy. Thailand's parliament today voted in favor of voiding the prime ministerial nomination of Move Forward leader Pita Limjaroenrat. This after political rivals challenged the use of a rule under which he was put forward as a candidate. His party won the election in May, but he was unable to earn the required majority from lawmakers in the first vote last week. Earlier, Constitutional Court suspended Pita as a lawmaker over allegations he may have violated election laws. Nasri Karim has more.
These protesters vent their anger outside the Thai parliament, some firing expletives at the Constitutional Court. They are supporters of Pita Limjaroenrat, the Prime Minister hopeful who was suspended as a lawmaker by the court. The court agreed to hear a case in which Pita is alleged to have violated election law by holding undeclared shares in a media company. The 42-year-old Western-educated Pita said the shares in the now-defunct ITV public company was passed down by his late father, who died in 2006, via a trust company. He said he had since offloaded the stock. He was given 2 weeks to prove his innocence and was still ready to lead the country because the Prime Minister need not be an elected lawmaker. But he then came up against another obstacle, that of opponents questioning the validity of his nomination by his 8-party coalition. The unelected and military-heavy Senate is proving his undoing, with Pita earning the ire of conservatives, opposed to his progressive leanings, especially his quest to decriminalize the act of insulting Thailand's revered royal family. In last week's first vote, the coalition of Move Forward Party and the Pheu Thai Party and 6 others mustered 324 votes, short of the minimum 376 needed to install a prime minister. Before today, Pita vowed to step aside in the leadership race and allow a candidate from the Pheu Thai Party to stand if he could not garner at least 10% more votes than last time. He had already accepted the court's decision to suspend him and walked out of chambers amid applause from fellow lawmakers. On the eve of the second vote, Pita told Reuters that he did not feel the election has been a failure.
So when people ask me, how do you feel that you have failed? And I would respond back to them that I won. I formed and I got blocked. I didn't fail. I won the election, I formed the coalition, and I got blocked by the appointed senates. Let us be clear on that. So if you think about it in this perspective, I'm honored to be nominated and I'm grateful for how far we have come together to this point.
Nasri Karim, TVB News.
Still ahead. Trump says he's the target of special counsel's probe into efforts to overturn his 2020 presidential election defeat. The ICAC invited by the UN to organize an anti-corruption workshop. Former U.S. President Donald Trump said he has received a letter from special counsel Jack Smith stating that he is a target of a grand jury investigation into efforts to overturn his 2020 presidential election defeat. This comes as Michigan's Attorney General filed felony charges on Tuesday against 16 Republicans who acted as fake electors for then-President Trump in 2020. This report from NBC News.
Donald Trump tonight is the target of another federal criminal investigation, this time into his efforts to hold on to power after losing the 2020 presidential election. The former president revealing the target letter on social media, calling the special counsel leading the probe, quote, deranged Jack Smith, adding his attorneys received a letter Sunday night, giving him 4 days to come to Washington and tell grand jurors his side of the story. Communication which Mr. Trump writes, quote, almost always means an arrest and indictment. The special counsel's investigation covers any unlawful interference into the transfer of power in 2020, including the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, for which Mr. Trump has already been impeached but not convicted, as well as efforts to send fake Trump electors to Washington. Michigan's Attorney General today announcing charges against 16 such electors from that state on election law and forgery felonies.
This plan to reject the will of the voters and undermine democracy was fraudulent and legally baseless.
Allies of the GOP presidential frontrunner springing to his defense as news of the target letter broke today.
So what do they do now? Weaponize government to go after their #1 opponent. It's time and time again.
While his campaign rivals offered careful critiques, wary of angering the Trump supporters they hope to win over.
The rest of this primary election is going to be, in reference to Trump, it's going to be about lawsuits. It's going to be about legal fees. It's going to be about judges. And it's just going to continue to be a further and further distraction.
I think it was shown how he was in the White House and didn't do anything while things were going on. He should have come out more forcefully.
What specific charges Mr. Trump may face next are unknown and would come on top of criminal charges he already faces in Manhattan related to alleged hush money payments to Stormy Daniels and federal charges in Florida over his handling of classified documents. All while a grand jury in Georgia prepares to hear evidence of 2020 election interference there, which could lead to additional charges.
Locally, the Independent Commission Against Corruption, or ICAC, has been invited by the United Nations to organize an anti-corruption workshop for the first time. The anti-corruption body will introduce new technology, including the third-generation interview room, which utilizes 3 cameras on the room's walls and ceiling to capture the interviewee's facial expressions. The ICAC noted that the workshop will provide much-needed experience for the International Anti-Corruption Academy set to be opened next year. The ICAC added that it hopes to use the opportunity to trade insights with global anti-corruption bodies. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.